The broken bladed night was quiet on the edge of the old space station. Most people were asleep, and the long metal halls were empty. Only the sound of machines humming and air vents blowing could be heard. Jack sat in his small workshop, fixing an old engine part, when a sudden loud crash outside made him jump. He froze, holding his wrench in the air. It sounded like something heavy had fallen near his door. The lights above flickered for a second, then came back on. Jack slowly stood up and walked toward the door. His hands were a little shaky. Nothing ever happened here. Nothing loud. Nothing exciting. And that's how he liked it. Until now. He opened the door carefully and looked out into the station corridor. At first, he didn't see anything. The floor was empty, and the long hall stretched into darkness. Then, just as he was about to close the door, he noticed something. Lying just outside, a figure. Jack stepped closer. His boots clicked on the metal floor. It was a person. No, not quite. The figure was taller than any human he had seen. Its armor was dark and sharp-looking, and strange glowing lines ran across its body. It was lying on its side, breathing heavily. In its hand, it held a long broken blade that seemed to shimmer faintly, like a dying star. Jack crouched down. "Hey," he said softly, not sure if it could understand him. "Are you okay?" The figure shifted slightly and opened its eyes. They were bright, almost white, and they stared at him for a long, tense moment. Jack felt his heart pound. This was no ordinary traveler. It was an alien, one he had never seen before. The alien tried to lift its blade, but the blade was cracked. Down the middle, sparking faintly, the alien's hand trembled. It looked at him and spoke. A single word. Quiet but full of weight. Double quotes. Fix. Double quotes. Jack blinked. Fix? He repeated. The alien nodded weakly, and then its head fell back, eyes closing. It had fainted. Jack stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. The smell of burned metal and something strange, like ozone, filled the air around her. The blade in her hand pulsed once, then went dim. He looked down at her armor again. There were cuts and scorch marks all over it. He thought it might be a she, was badly hurt. Jack rubbed the back of his neck. He could call security, but he didn't want to. Something about the way she clutched that broken blade made him curious and afraid. He sighed. "All right," he said to no one. "Come on, then." With some effort, he managed to drag her into his workshop and lay her on a mat in the corner. She was heavy, much heavier than she looked. Her armor was cold and hard under his hands. He then turned to the strange blade she had dropped. It lay on his workbench now. Jack stared at it. Even broken, it looked beautiful. It was long, thin, but unlike any metal he knew. Faint blue lines ran through it, like veins, and it gave off a soft warmth. Jack touched it gently. It hummed under his fingers. He pulled his hand back quickly. "What the hell?" He muttered. He fetched his tools and sat down. The blade was cracked almost clean through, but the pieces were still attached. The break glowed faintly. It was no ordinary break. It looked alive. Somehow. He ran his scanner over it. The screen flashed red. "Unknown material," it said. Of course. Nothing on this station was ever simple. He glanced back at the alien. She hadn't moved. Her breathing was slow, steady. Her armor rose and fell quietly. Jack shook his head. What had he gotten himself into? He picked up his finest soldering tool and touched it to the crack. The blade hissed and glowed brighter. Jack flinched but kept going. Slowly, carefully, he worked on the strange metal, trying to line up the pieces. The blade seemed to resist him at first, then relax, as though letting him work. "That's it," he whispered, more to himself than anything. Just a little more. Then, suddenly, the lights in the workshop flickered again. The blade flared bright in his hands, forcing him to squint. Strange symbols, glowing blue letters, appeared on its surface. Jack froze. He heard movement behind him. When he turned, he saw the alien sitting up, her white eyes fixed on him. She said something in her strange language, fast and sharp, then pointed at the blade. Jack held it up awkwardly. I'm working on it, he said. She tilted her head, staring at him, and for the first time he saw something in her expression. Not anger, not fear, but respect, and maybe a little impatience. Fix, she said again, her voice stronger this time. Jack nodded slowly. Yeah, he said quietly. I'll fix it. I don't know what this is or who you are, but I'll fix it. But deep inside, he knew this was no ordinary job. This blade, this alien, and whatever was chasing her, it was just the beginning. Asterisk, a blade like no other lay on Jack's workbench, glowing faintly in the dark. The alien warrior sat silently on the floor nearby, watching him with her strange white eyes. She hadn't said a word since she woke up. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. Hurry. Jack worked quietly, but inside, his mind was racing. This was no normal weapon. This was no normal night. He kept glancing at her. She was leaning against the wall, breathing deeply, her hand still clutching a wound on her side. Yet, even hurt, she looked dangerous. Her armor shimmered faintly every time the blade glowed, as if they were connected somehow. He wiped sweat from his forehead and picked up the blade again. As soon as his fingers wrapped around it, the air in the workshop changed. The lights flickered. Tools on the shelves rattled. And for a moment, just a second, Jack felt like something was looking at him from inside the blade. He pulled his hand back, startled. What the hell? He whispered. The alien's voice broke the silence. Fix, now. She spoke slowly, but her voice carried strength, like a command. Jack swallowed hard, then nodded. I'm trying, he muttered. He picked up a scanner and ran it along the crack in the blade. The screen flashed again. Unknown material. Energy signature unstable. Do not touch. Too late for that. Jack grumbled. Then he noticed something strange. The blade was healing itself. He wasn't fixing it. It was fixing itself while he worked. Every time he aligned the edges, the crack grew smaller, glowing hotter, as though it wanted to be whole. But at the same time, he felt something else, like the blade was fighting him. A faint voice, not the alien's, whispered in his head, You are not worthy. He dropped the blade in shock. It clattered on the table, and the alien's eyes flashed. Do not. Stop, she said, her breathing heavier now. Or they find us. They? Who's they? Jack asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes, as if listening to something far away. Her fingers tightened around her wound, and her body tensed. Jack noticed a faint hum growing in the air. The walls of the workshop vibrated. Outside, the lights in the hallway began to flicker too. He stood and walked to the door. When he opened it, his stomach sank. Through the small round window at the end of the corridor, he could see a shadow, a massive ship, black, silent, and shaped like a claw, hovered outside the station. It hadn't been there 5 minutes ago. Now it loomed so close that the stars behind it disappeared. Jack's chest tightened. He turned back toward the alien. She was already standing now, her breathing steady again, though her face was pale. She reached out her hand. Blade, she said. It's not fixed yet. Jack protested. She shook her head. They come. They smell it. If they take it, all ends. Jack's hands trembled as he picked up the blade again. It was warmer now, almost hot to the touch. The symbols on it, those strange glowing letters, were clearer than before. They shifted and moved across the metal like liquid light. "What is this thing?" Jack asked. She stared at him for a long moment, then finally spoke. "The blade is my command, my army, my life. Without it, nothing. They rule. Everyone dies." Jack swallowed hard. "Right. No pressure," he muttered, sitting back down. He pressed his tools to the blade again. This time it didn't resist. Instead, it almost guided him. The crack began to seal itself, bright light pouring from it. The glow was so strong now that it lit up the whole room. And then the entire station shook violently. A deafening sound of metal tearing filled the air. The lights went out completely, leaving only the blade's glow. The alien moved too, the door in one swift motion, pulling a small, round device from her belt. It projected a faint shield of light over the doorway. Jack looked at her in panic. "What was that?" "Hunters," she replied simply. "They found us." The sound of heavy footsteps echoed in the hall. Sharp claws scraped against the floor. Dark shapes, tall, thin, and fast, moved in the shadows just beyond the doorway. Their eyes glowed faint red, and their voices hissed in a language Jack couldn't understand. The alien glanced at him. "Fix it. Now, or we both die." Jack nodded, his hands shaking but determined. He pressed the final edges of the blade together. The light grew blinding, and the symbols flared so bright he had to close his eyes. When he opened them again, the crack was gone. The blade was whole, perfect, and alive. The alien stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "Give," she said firmly. Jack hesitated, staring at the glowing weapon. It didn't just feel powerful anymore. It felt dangerous. Behind them, the door shook as the hunters began to pound on it, leaving long, deep scratches in the metal. The shield flickered. Jack looked into her white eyes and finally placed the blade in her hand. The moment her fingers wrapped around it, the entire room went silent. She stood straighter, taller, her armor flaring with light. She turned toward the door just as it burst open. And then Jack saw something he would never forget. With a single swing of the now repaired blade, she cut through the darkness, and the hunters fell back, hissing and screeching in fear. She glanced back at Jack and, for the first time, smiled faintly. "Good," she said. "You are worthy." Jack just stared, stunned. Outside, the black ship began to move closer, its massive engines rumbling like thunder. And deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The hunter arrived. Shield at the door shimmered faintly, holding back the dark shapes outside. But only just. Jack stood frozen in his workshop, staring at the alien warrior as she gripped the repaired blade in her hand. The weapon now glowed so bright, it cast sharp shadows on the walls. The symbols along its edge danced like fire. She took a slow breath and stepped closer to the door. "Stay," she ordered Jack without looking back. Jack swallowed hard. "Yeah, no problem," he muttered, though his feet itched to run. The hallway beyond the shield was full of hunters now, at least a dozen of them. They moved like liquid shadows, long claws scraping the floor, their eyes glowing faint red. They whispered to each other in their strange language, sharp and fast. Jack could feel their hunger even from here. It was like the air itself was heavier. With them around. Suddenly, everything went silent. The hunters stopped moving. And then, the sound of heavy, slow footsteps echoed through the corridor. Jack felt the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. This was different. This was not just another hunter. This was something worse. The alien warrior tensed, her grip tightening on the blade. Her white eyes narrowed as she stared at the door. "He comes," she said quietly. Jack's voice cracked. "Who comes?" She didn't answer. The footsteps grew louder. And then, through the shield, Jack saw him. A towering figure stepped into view. Taller than the others by far, his armor black and jagged, covered in strange scars that seemed to glow faint orange. His face was hidden behind a dark mask with curved horns, and his eyes burned like two hot coals. The hunters around him backed away slightly, lowering their heads as he passed. He stopped just outside the shield and looked at the alien warrior. Then his deep, rough voice rumbled through the air like distant thunder. "You cannot run," he said in perfect English. "The blade is not yours anymore." The alien lifted her chin slightly, her voice sharp and cold. "It was never yours." He tilted his head. "You have no army now, no fleet, no throne. You are nothing." His eyes then shifted to Jack. "And you, little human, do you even know what you have touched?" Jack took a step back, his chest tight. I just fixed it," he said weakly. The hunter leader chuckled low and cruel. "Yes, you fixed it. And now you belong to it and to me." Before Jack could speak, the leader raised one clawed hand, and the shield over the door cracked loudly, sending sparks flying. The alien warrior moved instantly. She raised the blade, and its light flared so bright that the hunters hissed and backed away. She spoke to Jack without looking at him. "Hide, do not follow." But Jack shook his head. "You'll die," he blurted out. She glanced at him briefly, and for the first time there was a faint softness in her expression. "Better me than you." With that, she stepped through the weakening shield, and it shattered behind her. Two of them, the warrior and the hunter leader, stood facing each other now in the hall. The other hunters retreated to the shadows, giving them space. Jack crouched behind his workbench, but couldn't tear his eyes away. The leader moved first, fast despite his size. He struck at her with a black, serrated blade. She parried with hers, the clash of their weapons sending out a shockwave that rattled the walls. The fight was brutal. The leader's strikes were heavy, precise, full of rage. Hers were quick, sharp, full of fire. The corridor lit up with every swing, sparks raining down as metal screamed. Jack felt his stomach twist with every blow. He had never seen anything like this. Two beings fighting with such speed and power. It didn't seem real. Then the leader managed to shove her back against the wall. His blade pressed close to her throat. He leaned in and growled, "You cannot win. Surrender the blade." But she only smiled faintly. "Come and take it." With a sudden burst of strength, she drove her knee into his chest, knocking him back. Her blade swung upward in a bright arc, cutting through the ceiling above them. Debris fell everywhere. The leader staggered, but caught himself. His eyes burned. Hotter now. He raised both hands, and from his palms shot out two streams of dark energy that struck her square in the chest. She cried out and fell to her knees, her armor cracking under the force. Jack's single quotes S heart pounded in his ears. He couldn't just watch anymore. He looked around the workshop for anything he could use. His eyes landed on a small welding torch. Useless? Probably. But his hands grabbed it anyway. He slipped quietly out the back of the workshop, moving through a side corridor. His plan, if it could even be called a plan, was simple. Distract the hunter. Give her an opening. As he crept closer, he could hear the leader's voice again. "Give me the blade, or I will burn this station to dust." The warrior spat at his feet. "Earn it." The leader raised his blade high, ready to strike, when Jack burst out of the shadows, aiming the welding torch at the hunter's back. A jet of flame hissed into the dark armor. It didn't hurt him much, but it was enough. He roared in surprise and spun around. That was all the warrior needed. She lunged forward, her glowing blade cutting through his shoulder. The leader howled in rage and pain, swinging wildly, but she dodged and struck again, this time slicing deep into his side. He stumbled back, his burning eyes narrowing at both of them now. "This is not over," he hissed. Then, with a flash of black light, he and the other hunters vanished into the shadows, leaving only silence and the faint smell of smoke. The warrior lowered her blade, breathing hard. She turned to Jack, her eyes unreadable. "You should have stayed," she said quietly. Jack stood there, still holding the useless welding torch, his heart racing. "Yeah," he said, "but you looked like you could use a hand." The faintest smile touched her lips before she turned away. "They will come again," she warned, "stronger, and next time they will not run." Jack nodded slowly, staring at the spot where the hunter leader had disappeared. "Then we'll be ready," he said, but deep down he knew. This was no longer just about fixing a blade. This was a war. And somehow he was part of it now. Asterisk. Secrets of the warrior after the hunters vanished. Silence hung heavy in the workshop. The alien warrior stood in the doorway, her blade still glowing faintly in her hand. She didn't move for a long time. Jack watched her from across the room, still clutching the welding torch, though his hand ached from gripping it so tight. "They're gone," he said finally, his voice hoarse. She didn't answer. Instead, she slowly slid the blade back into a strange sheath on her back and walked to the center of the room. She knelt there, closed her eyes, and rested her hands on her knees. Jack stared at her. She looked calm now, but there was something in her face, a crack in her mask. Exhaustion, fear, maybe even sadness. He cleared his throat. "So, are you going to tell me what's going on? Because I'm pretty sure I deserve some answers after almost getting sliced in half by space demons." Her eyes opened slowly. She fixed them on him. "What do you wish to know?" Jack raised his hands. "Everything? For starters, what the hell are those things? Why are they after you? What's this blade, really? And what does it have to do with me?" She tilted her head as if studying him. Then she stood and walked to his workbench. She picked up a small metal scrap, turning it between her fingers as she spoke. "The blade," she began, her voice quiet but sharp, "is not a weapon. It is a throne." Jack blinked. "A throne?" "Yes," she said. "Whoever holds it commands my fleet, my worlds, my people. The blade is the proof of power. It chooses the worthy. The hunters," she paused, her jaw tightening, "want it. Because with it, they rule everything. The galaxy, the skies, even the ground beneath your feet." Jack's mouth went dry. "So, you're saying you're like some kind of queen?" She looked at him then, really looked at him, and for the first time, Jack saw something human in her eyes. "Regret. I was," she said simply. "But I lost." She turned away, placing the metal scrap back on the table. "My fleet was shattered. My armies destroyed. My council betrayed me. They broke my blade so it would not choose me again. And then they hunted me. Until I fell. Here, to you." Jack let out a low whistle. "Hell of a story." She ignored his tone and continued. "When you touched the blade, it awakened. It allowed you to repair it. Do you understand what that means?" Jack shook his head. "Not a damn clue." She walked toward him, stopping just a foot away. She was taller than him, her armor still faintly glowing. "It means," she said softly, "it chose you." Jack laughed nervously, backing up a step. "Oh, no, 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 no. You've got the wrong guy. I'm just a mechanic. I fix ships and vending machines. I don't command fleets." She tilted her head again, a faint smile tugging at her lips. "Neither did I, once." Jack opened his mouth to argue, but stopped when he heard it. A faint voice, not hers. not his. But inside his mind, you are worthy. He froze. His eyes darted to the blade on her back. It glowed faintly, as if winking at him. Did you hear that? He asked, his voice shaky. She shook her head. The blade speaks only to its chosen. Jack sank into a chair, burying his face in his hands. Fantastic, he muttered. I fix one broken sword, and now I'm space royalty. Just great. She said nothing for a while, just watched him quietly dot then, without warning. She pulled a small circular device from her belt and tossed it onto the floor. It hummed and projected a hologram into the air. A map of stars, thousands of points, of light stretching across the dark. These, she said, gesturing at the map, are the systems I once ruled. Now they burn. Jack stared at the map, stunned. Vast regions of it were marked in red, others flickering dimly, as though dying. Only a few faint blue spots remained. My people fight still, she said, but they are losing. Because they believe I am dead. Because they believe the blade is lost. If they knew it was whole again, if they knew I still lived, they would rise. Jack swallowed hard, feeling the weight of what she was saying. So, you want me to, what? Lead them? She shook her head. No, she said. You are not ready, but you will help me. You will come with me. You will learn. Jack stood up, running a hand through his hair. And if I say no? She stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. Then they will find you, she said, and you will die. And they will take the blade from your corpse. And all of this, your station, your planet, your people, will burn with you. Jack exhaled slowly, staring down at the glowing blade. Well, he said finally, when you put it like that. She smiled faintly. Good, you begin to understand. Just then, the station lights flickered again. Jack glanced up, his stomach sinking. Please tell me that's just the power acting up, he said. She didn't answer. Instead, she raised her head, her expression hardening. They're already here, she said. The hologram map blinked and shifted, showing a massive black fleet closing in on their position. Jack stared at it, feeling a chill run through him. That's a lot of ships, he said weakly. Hunters do not stop, she replied, her hand already on her blade. They do not rest. And they will not forgive what you did tonight. Jack sighed and picked up his jacket. Yes, I better pack then. She glanced at him and nodded once. You learn fast, she said. The hologram flickered again. And this time, the voice inside his head whispered louder. The throne awaits. Jack clenched his fists, staring at the door as distant rumbles shook the station. Ready or not, his quiet. Life was over, and the war for the galaxy had already begun. Asterisk Betrayal Station's corridors were no longer silent. Alarms blared in the distance. The floor beneath Jack's feet vibrated with a low, steady hum of engines powering up or tearing apart. Lights flickered overhead, casting long shadows that moved like ghosts on the walls. Jack followed the alien warrior down the narrow service tunnels. She moved fast despite her injuries, her glowing blade strapped tightly to her back. Every few steps she glanced behind them, her white eyes sharp and alert. Where are we going? Jack asked, jogging to keep up. She didn't turn. A ship, she said flatly. What kind of ship? The kind that flies, she replied. Jack groaned, but didn't argue. Anything was better than staying here. The hunters were coming. And now, after what she'd told him, he knew they wouldn't stop until they ripped the blade from his cold, dead hands. They reached a small cargo bay at the far edge of the station. Inside was an old shuttle, scratched and scarred, but intact. The warrior moved quickly, pressing her palm to the door. It hissed open, revealing a dim interior with 2 seats and a cramped cockpit. "Get in," she ordered. Jack hesitated. "You? Sure this thing even works?" She shot him a look. "It will. Or we die here. Right. Good enough for me," Jack muttered, climbing in. She followed, sealing the hatch behind them. The engines whined to life as she tapped commands into the console. Outside, the faint roar of another ship's engines echoed closer. Jack caught a glimpse of red lights flashing through the bay windows. Hunters boarding the station. "UH," Jack said, pointing. "They're here." She didn't look up. "Then we are late," she replied. The shuttle shook violently as it lifted off. Jack gripped the armrest until his knuckles turned white. The bay doors above them creaked, groaned, and finally opened, revealing the endless. Black of space the shuttle shot through and out, leaving the station and the hunters behind. For a moment, Jack allowed himself to breathe. "We made it," he said, leaning back, but the warrior stayed tense, scanning the sensors. Jack frowned. "You don't look very happy for someone who just escaped certain death." She glanced at him, her voice quiet. "We are not safe yet." Before Jack could ask what she meant, the console beeped sharply. A red dot appeared on the screen, then another, then dozens. "What is that?" he asked. Her jaw tightened. "Them," she said. He stared at the display, watching the red dots multiply, forming a net around them. "How are they already here?" "They expected us to run," she explained. "They are smarter than you think." Jack swallowed hard. "Well, that's great." She adjusted the controls, weaving the shuttle through a narrow field of asteroids. The hunters' ships followed close behind, dark shapes slipping through the rocks with terrifying speed. Jack stared out the window, his stomach twisting. "I don't suppose you have any brilliant ideas right now?" She didn't answer. Instead, she muttered something in her own language and pressed a button on her belt. A faint crackle of static filled the cabin. At first, Jack thought it was just noise, but then he realized it was a voice. Her voice. "This is Commander Kale of the last fleet. If you can hear me, I have the blade. I am alive. Rally to me." Coordinates attached, then silence. Jack blinked. "You just told everyone where we are?" She nodded. "My people will come." He stared at her. "And what if the hunters heard it too?" "They already know," she said simply. "Before." He could argue. The shuttle shook hard. Something had struck them. A sharp alarm blared as warning lights flashed. What was that? He yelled. Kale checked the sensors, her expression dark. "Tracker," she said. "They've attached to us." She stood abruptly and pulled the blade from her back. "Stay here?" she said. Jack blinked. "Stay here? What are you—" Before he could finish, she opened the rear hatch. The airlock hissed, and for a terrifying moment, Jack thought she was going to throw herself out into space. But instead, she leapt into the narrow corridor at the back of the shuttle. Jack followed, despite himself. When he reached the rear, he froze. A hunter, one of the smaller ones, was already inside. Its claws were sunk into the wall, pulling itself toward the cockpit. It turned its red eyes on Jack and hissed, baring rows of sharp teeth. Kale was already moving. She struck fast, her blade cutting through the hunter's arm before it even reached her. The creature screamed, twisting violently, but another hunter followed it inside, and then another. Jack backed up as the fight raged. It was brutal, fast, and chaotic. Claws against blade, light against darkness. And then a voice crackled in the cabin speakers. "Jack." He froze. Who is that?" "Jack," the voice said again, clearer now. "Listen. To me, she lies to you." He spun around, searching for the source. "What are you talking about?" "She is not what she claims," the voice continued. "She will use you, Take the blade. Kill her before it's too late. Jack stared at Kale. She was fighting, her movements graceful and fierce, but for the first time, he noticed something. In her face, a strange intensity, a hunger. Who are you? Jack demanded. The voice replied, I am the rightful heir. The blade is mine. She stole it from me. You fixed it for her, but it belongs to me. Jack's heart pounded in his chest. Kale finished the last hunter, turning back toward him. Her armor was cracked, her breathing heavy, but her white eyes glowed with fire. Jack, she said, her voice calm but urgent. We must go. Now. But the voice in the speakers hissed louder. Kill her now, Jack, before she kills you. She will betray you, just as she betrayed her people. Jack looked at her, then at the blade in her hand. And for the first time, doubt crept into his mind. Kale tilted her head slightly, watching him. What is wrong? She asked. Jack swallowed hard. I just need a second, he muttered. She frowned, stepping closer. There is no time for seconds, she said. But in the back of his mind, the voice whispered again, low and dangerous. She betrayed them all. And you are next. Jack clenched his fists, staring at the blade, and he realized, in that moment, he didn't know who to trust anymore. The battle of the Blady shuttle shook, so hard Jack thought it might tear itself apart. Outside the window, the stars spun wildly as Kale weaved through a rain of red and black ships. The hunter's fleet was everywhere now, like a swarm of claws and teeth, blocking every way forward. Flashes of light from weapons fire streaked across the dark, lighting up the cockpit in bursts of white and orange. Jack sat frozen in the co-pilot's seat, gripping the straps across his chest, his eyes wide. We can't fight all of them. ESTAMMERED. Kale didn't answer. Her hands moved swiftly across the controls, her white eyes fixed on the chaos outside. Her expression was calm, but her knuckles were pale where she gripped the controls. The console, the red dots of the hunters multiplied, surrounding them like a tightening noose. Jack swallowed hard. Kale, tell me you have a plan, he said. She glanced at him, her voice low and steady. You are the plan. Before he could ask what she meant, a sudden blast rocked the shuttle, throwing them sideways. Sparks rained from the ceiling. Alarms wailed, and smoke began to fill the cabin. Jack coughed, waving his hand in front of his face. That doesn't sound like a good plan. Kale slammed a button on the panel. The shuttle lurched, then shot downward toward a massive planet. Below. Jack caught a glimpse of it through the smoke. A shattered world, broken into pieces, but still glowing faintly with rivers of molten light. A ruined battlefield. Where are we going? He yelled. Kale single quotes, his eyes narrowed. To the throne, she replied. The words sent a chill down Jack's spine. Below them, the hunters followed, their ships screaming through the thin atmosphere. Red beams of energy fired past them, some striking the shuttle and tearing chunks from its wings. With one last violent shudder, the shuttle smashed into the surface of the planet, skidding across broken rock and molten rivers before finally slamming to a stop against a jagged cliff. Everything went still for a moment. Jack groaned and pushed himself upright, his head spinning. The cabin was dark now, lit only by the faint glow of Kale's blade. She was already out of her seat, her movements deliberate and tense. She opened the hatch and stepped outside. Jack stumbled after her. The ground beneath his feet was hot and cracked, glowing faintly red in places. Above them, the sky was full of black ships circling like vultures. At the top of the cliff ahead of them stood an ancient structure, a towering black spire, sharp and imposing, with strange glowing symbols. Running along its surface. Kale stopped and looked back at him. The blade must touch the throne, she said. Only then will the fleet return. Jack stared at her, then at the spire. And what happens if it doesn't? He asked quietly. Her white eyes glimmered faintly in the heat. Then everything ends. Before Jack could respond, the sound of claws scraping rock echoed around them. The hunters were already landing nearby, stepping out of their ships like shadows come to life. And then he saw him again, the hunter leader. He stood at the edge of the battlefield, his black armor glowing faint orange, his two burning eyes fixed on Jack. Human, the leader called out, his deep voice cutting through the air. Give me the blade. She lies to you. You are nothing to her, just another pawn. Jack froze. The words echoed the ones he'd heard before. Kale stepped closer to him, her blade in hand. Ignore him, she hissed. He will say anything. To take it. But the leader continued, stepping forward, his army parting around him. She betrayed her people. She betrayed me. She will betray you too. Give it to me, and I will spare your life. Jack looked at her, then at him. Everything inside him felt heavy. Kale single quotes, his jaw tightened, her voice sharp. Jack, now choose. He looked at her blade, and for a moment he felt it again, the faint voice inside his head. You are worthy. His chest tightened. He reached out and took the blade from her hand. Kale's eyes widened slightly, but she said nothing. The hunter leader let out a low growl. Fool. He spat. But Jack didn't hand it to him. Instead, he turned toward the spire. If this is a throne, he muttered, then let's finish it. He started walking, slowly at first, then faster. Behind him, the hunters roared and charged. Kale moved instantly, slashing through the first wave with deadly precision. The air filled with screams and the clang of weapons. Jack kept going. The heat grew more intense with every step, the symbols on the spire glowing brighter as he approached. The blade in his hands grew hotter, the strange letters on its surface lighting up one by one. At the base of the spire, a massive stone door stood waiting, carved with the same symbols. Jack pressed the blade against it. And the door exploded in light. A shockwave rippled out from the spire, throwing hunters back and cracking the ground beneath them. Kale staggered, but stayed on her feet. The hunter leader howled in rage as the light swallowed him, his claws tearing at the air. Jack stepped through the door. Inside was a vast chamber, open to the sky, with a circular platform at its center. Hundreds of glowing figures stood silently along the walls, holograms of soldiers. Waiting. At the center of the platform was a single pedestal. Jack walked to it and placed the blade on top. The room went completely silent. Then a deafening roar filled the air. The holograms flared to life, their armor shining, their weapons raised. Ships appeared in the sky above, massive and brilliant, their lights burning through the dark. Kale staggered into the chamber behind him, her white eyes wide. You did it? She whispered. Jack turned to her, his chest still heaving, his hands shaking. What happens now? He asked. She stepped closer, her expression a strange mix of awe and fear. Now, she said softly, they follow you. Jack looked back at the blade as it floated above the pedestal, blazing with light. And he realized, for better or worse, he was no longer just a mechanic. He was the commander of a fleet. And the war was far from over. The human who fixed the Galactic throne room was alive now. Where moments ago it was just stone and silence. It now blazed with light and energy. Towering holograms of alien soldiers stood in perfect ranks around Jack. Their armor shimmered gold and blue, their weapons raised in salute. Above him, massive starships moved into position in the skies, their engines roaring like a storm. And at the center of it all, Jack stood on the platform, the blade hovering just above his hands. It pulsed brightly, as though alive, as though breathing with him. Dot Kale stood a few steps behind him, her white eyes fixed on him. But she didn't look at him the way she used to, not just as a human. She looked at him as something more now. He swallowed hard, staring at the glowing blade. "So, this is it?" he said quietly. Dot Kale nodded once. "You have awakened the fleet," she said. Her voice was softer than before. "They are yours to command." Jack turned slowly, taking in the massive army now waiting for his orders. Thousands, no, millions of soldiers, ships, weapons, all this? Just because I fixed a broken sword, he said under his breath. Dot Kale stepped closer. "You didn't just fix it," she said. "You proved you are worthy of it. The blade chooses its master. And now they all follow you." Jack let out a shaky laugh. "Yeah," he muttered. "That's great. But what exactly am I supposed to do now? Give a speech? Lead a charge? Save the galaxy?" Kale tilted her head slightly, almost smiling. "Yes," she said simply. Jack ran a hand through his hair, still staring at the army before him. "Right," he sighed. "Of course." But before he could say anything else, the ground shook violently. The walls of the throne room cracked. The sky outside darkened as a massive shadow fell over the spire. Jack and Kale both turned at once. Outside, the hunter leader had returned. His ship, larger than anything Jack had seen before, hovered above the spire, its black metal claws digging into the cliffs. Hunters poured out of it like rivers of darkness, swarming toward the throne. At the center of it all stood the hunter leader himself, his burning eyes fixed on Jack. His voice boomed across the battlefield. "You think you've won?" He snarled. "This throne is mine. It was always mine. You are nothing, just a tool she used to fix what she couldn't." Jack froze. His eyes darted to Kale, whose expression stayed perfectly still. But the words cut into him anyway. The hunter leader stepped closer, his army crawling behind him. "She betrayed her people before," he continued. "She'll betray you too. Give me the blade, give me the fleet, and I'll spare your little planet, your little life." Jack's hands tightened around the blade. He looked at Kale, and for the first time he asked the question that had been burning in him since the beginning. "Is he telling the truth?" He whispered. Kale met his eyes. Her expression didn't change. "I did what I had to," she said. Jack stared at her. "That's not an answer." Her white eyes flickered, and she finally said, "Yes. I betrayed him because he was unworthy, because he would have burned everything. I took the blade so he could not destroy the galaxy, and I paid the price, but I will not let him win. Not now, not ever." Jack stood there, the weight of her, words heavy in his chest. The hunter leader laughed. "And now she'll let you die for her lies, just like she let me." The blade in Jack's hands glowed brighter, the voice inside his mind speaking louder than ever before. "You choose. The galaxy burns, or the galaxy lives. Choose." Now. Jack closed his eyes, the roar of the two armies filling his ears. He thought about his quiet little workshop. He thought about the nights he sat alone fixing engines no one cared about. He thought about Kale collapsing in his doorway. He thought about the hunters chasing them. He thought about the thousands, millions of lives hanging on this moment. When he opened his eyes, they were steady. He gripped the blade tight and stepped forward. "No," he called out, his voice echoing across the chamber. "I won't give it to either of you, because neither of you deserve it." The hunter leader's eyes flared in rage. "Then you die," he growled. Charging forward, Kale's voice rang out behind him. "Jack, what are you doing?" But Jack didn't stop. He raised the blade high and slammed it into the center of the throne. The platform beneath him exploded in light, a shockwave tearing through the room. The hunters screamed as the energy ripped through them. throwing them back into the shadows. The hunter leader staggered, his armor cracking, his claws scraping against the floor as the power of the throne burned through him. Jack held on, his whole body shaking, the blade brighter than ever now. The holograms of soldiers knelt as one. The fleet above blazed to life, their weapons turning on the hunter ships. Kale shielded her eyes from the blinding light. "Jack," she whispered. The hunter leader fell to his knees, his mask shattering, his eyes dimming. "Impossible," he gasped before collapsing into the dust. The light began to fade. The roar quieted. And when it was over, Jack stood, alone at the center of the throne, the blade now a faint glow in his hand. Kale stepped forward slowly, her eyes wide. He looked at her, his voice steady and quiet. "This galaxy isn't yours," he said, "and it sure as hell isn't his. It belongs to all of them." She stared at him, then slowly dropped to one knee, lowering her head. And around them, so did the army. Jack glanced at the fleet above, now waiting silently for his command. He took a long breath and turned back to Kale. "You," he said, "are going to help me fix everything you two broke. And this time, we're doing it my way." Kale looked up at him, a faint smile crossing her lips for the first time. "As you command," she said. Jack stared out at the horizon, the broken galaxy stretching out before him. Just a mechanic. Just a man who fixed things. And now, the human who fixed a galaxy.